Hi everyone, I hope you're all well. I wanted to do a little video today to mark Mental Health Awareness Week and why it's so important to me, mental health in general. When I first started my Replenish and Repair account, obviously it was a platform to allow me to talk about the benefits of looking after your skin and feeling it from the outside in, but also it was to document parts of my journey, that holistic approach to well-being and mental health. Really, I have I struggled with my mental health for many years. I didn't really understand it. I didn't really know how to deal with it, and I didn't really want to accept that there was a problem or to speak to anyone about it. Over the past 5 years, I have got a much deeper understanding of my own mental health and factors that affect it, how to manage it, a self-awareness of it that I just didn't have before. And I feel that it's really important to share parts of that journey. A week like this really brings mental health to the forefront, and I guess to the forefront of everybody's minds, as well as in the spotlight in the media, on social media. And I just wanted to talk about my, and I'm not going to go into huge amounts of depth here, but just to talk about my experience with therapy and the benefits it's had to me. So 5 years ago, I began some person-led counselling, which was incredibly helpful at the time. And it was a point in my life where it was essential. It was like really critical. I'd reached that point where I was pretty much at rock bottom. My mental health was very up and down. It had been affected by the births of my children, but also prior to that, I had struggled with obsessive compulsive disorders with intrusive thoughts, and it's not something I could articulate very well or want to speak to anyone. I think I just couldn't talk about what was going on in my head, but it was incredibly painful, debilitating. It was just a really dark time, and I think I now understand that OCDs, as they're shortened, come from a place where you're feeling out of control. And I look back at those times and that's exactly how I felt. I thought I was going mad. I thought that no one would ever understand what was going on in my head, and it was just a really lonely place to be. I tentatively said some things to some people, but not really. And even now, it's hard to kind of go back to that place. And whilst that's probably a video for another time, the journey that I went on when I first started the person-led therapy was really interesting, because it got me into the realms of just talking and not being afraid to talk. And suddenly I found myself opposite this woman who was just there to listen. She was empathetic. She was quite nurturing actually as well, which is what I needed at the time. It was almost being engulfed in a big blanket of warmth and love and understanding. And I suddenly began that process of opening up, and the relief I felt was just indescribable. I listened, I talked, they understood what I was saying, and gradually my ability to talk about the OCDs in general, I would give a little bit more information, and I felt at the pace that I felt comfortable with. So she was great, absolutely. At that time in my life, it was just fantastic, and it really began that journey with therapies and understanding the benefits of it. Fast forward 3 years on, I had done a lot of self-development work in the meantime. I'm very open. I'm a spiritual person. I am always learning. Always want to hear new things about how I can help myself from like a holistic approach, kind of mind, body, soul. So I've been on my own journey very much so during that time. And I kind of got to a point where I just thought, you know what? I feel like I need to understand myself better. I need to understand some of my behaviours. It wasn't specifically to talk about a problem. At that time, the OCD was, I was, you know, much more under control. It was almost like I could see it. I could be an observer of my thoughts. I could be an observer of the OCD itself. So it was just, I was in a much stronger head place to really begin a different course of therapy, and I went into integrative psychotherapy, which looks at behaviours, looks at all your kind of understanding you as a person, your behaviours. It touched on like the spiritual side as well. It was very much more practical. It felt like cognitive behaviours as well, so kind of thought processes and patterns. And I got so much from that. I committed to, well, I didn't actually commit at the first start. I didn't know how long it was going to be, but I was open to know that I needed it to be what it needed to be. And we would review it almost every kind of 6 weeks where I was at. And it was just the most amazing journey, and more powerful actually than the first round of therapy I'd had. And it was hard, it was intense, and sometimes I'd feel so drained after I'd come away from a therapy session. But every time it was like little light bulbs going off all the time. And I just remember this feeling of, oh my God, that's why I behaved in certain ways in that scenario. Or, you know, this is like this just deeper understanding of yourself, where things come from and how to change those, and being kind to yourself. You know, looking at your inner child, kind of just showing compassion to yourself, the same compassion that you would show to other people. And at the time, I went privately. I'm quite open about that. I just wanted to get on with it. I didn't want to be on a waiting list. And I know, you know, the NHS is stretched, and I wanted to make sure I gave it the time it needed. I couldn't really afford it at the time, but I cut back in other areas. I made it work. I remember someone saying to me, if you want it to happen, you'll find a way of making it happen. And I did. And it's the best money I ever spent. I never regret that money, ever. It's been so valuable to help me grow and develop as a person, as a mother, as a friend, as a partner. It has just been so powerful. So that actually finished just before lockdown. So it gave me a lot of tools actually. And when we came into lockdown, there was a period of about 10 weeks where it was just me and the kids, or me and my own. And the only people I was seeing was my ex-husband and his partner, who were incredibly supportive, and we formed a really, you know, tight bubble. But it was there that I really felt some of my mental health was tested. You know, I could see the isolation, I guess the anxiety that came with the pandemic. It really pushed my mental health. And what was different this time was having this awareness of what was going on. It's almost like seeing yourself from above. You might feel low, and you might be struggling in certain areas, but I could see what was going on. And I knew at that point that my therapist had said to me when we finished, it's only through the tough times that we grow. Our resilience is tested, and that's where you will put into practice everything we've been learning about yourself. And it really was. And so whilst it was difficult, and whilst there were low points, just having this awareness that it would pass, I had enough tools to cope with it. I would do everything that I knew. So I'd tap into my kind of mental health toolkit, using all of those tools to help me navigate through it. And a lot of that comes for me is self-care, nourishing food, looking after myself, exercise, you know, even if it's just was a walk, being outside, being surrounded by positive people, those that really love you, you know, making sure that contact was high. Just being gentle, trying to get sleep. So all those things, I knew they were the things I could control, whilst I couldn't control much else that was going on. So it was a really interesting period for me, because it really demonstrated the power of the therapy that I'd undertaken, and yeah, putting it into play. So come away from there, after lockdown, I've also had some NLP, which is neuro-linguistic, I've forgotten the P, but neuro-linguistic programming. And that was largely down to some limiting beliefs that I held about myself, that I felt were preventing me from moving forward professionally and personally. And again, that was really interesting. So another completely, different type of therapy, looking at the subconscious, and really trying to change some of those kind of inherent beliefs that you're not even really aware on the surface, that you have, if that makes sense. I think it's something like 90% of our thoughts are in our subconscious. So that just blew my mind. So again, a really different type of therapy, because you're dealing with the unconscious. It was the therapy, particular type of therapy. I had some timeline therapy, which is dealing with negative emotions and limiting beliefs, and it was content free because you're dealing with the unconscious. So you were speaking to the unconscious, and at first I couldn't quite get my head around it. But again, keeping an open mind, and that's the kind of, I guess, the key message for me with your own mental health and well-being, is just keep an open mind. Nothing I've done I've ever regretted when it comes to the therapies I've taken. And the NLP was a much shorter burst of 6 sessions, but again, really, really powerful. And I feel so thankful that I trusted myself and took the leap, took any stigma away from it, and followed my gut instinct of where I needed areas of help. And I just think it's a message that I talk to with my children. I'm open with people, my friends, my family, and anyone who wants to speak about it. I'm really happy to do so. And I think the power of vulnerability, there is, wonderful Brené Brown in her TED talk on that, is just sums it up. When one person talks, it has a potential to resonate. Even if it resonates with just one other person, it can make you feel so much less alone. And that's what happened for me and started off my journey, reading somebody else's story and thinking, it's not just me, and it isn't just you. And the brain is such a complex and powerful being in its own right, that sometimes it's okay to say, do you know what, I need some help understanding this and how it all works, and how a lot of our behaviours are linked back to something that happened years ago maybe, or something that happened more recently. But just having that self-awareness is really key, and that understanding of yourself and compassion. And I just think it's really important to talk about these things, particularly therapy. My children know about it. It's something I would be advocating to them, as if that was a path they wanted to go down when they were older, or needed to, for whatever reason. It really, going back to it helps to talk, it really does. And so that's really what I wanted to come on today. Like I say, I've been thinking about my own journey with therapies, and wanted to just share a little bit of that with you. And I hope it's helped. And if you are considering it for whatever reason, then do it. One of the last thing I will say is that if you've had an experience with therapy where it's not been as positive, don't be put off, because sometimes it just might be that the relationship between you and that therapist isn't the right one for you. And it is all about finding that person that you connect with, and you feel you can build that relationship of trust up with. And once you've found that, it's a really powerful thing. So don't be afraid, don't let it put you off. Don't be afraid to go back to the drawing board and seek out a different therapist. There's lots of resources for finding support out there, but the first step is to just pick up the phone or write an email and just do it. And I'm confident just even making those first small steps will make you feel lighter. So sending lots of love to you all today and going forward. And if anyone ever needs to talk, my inbox is always open. And yeah, I hope that's helped. But anyway, I will speak to you all soon.